Hello, let's talk about myth number 6, about the conception of social safety, that it is a cult. Here perhaps we should have begun with definitions of terms, and that is important, but it's far more important to think not in terms of states, but in terms of processes, and to understand how, in general, a person decides to call something a sect, a cult, deviationist, or something else. The thing is that we always search for an upper boundary, an upper limit. We can't govern an object if, for us, the system is not enclosed. If we don't understand where the circuit of feed-forward lines is, where the circuit of feedback lines is, examples from life can be given endlessly. For instance, you write to the mayor, and he doesn't respond to your appeal. Up to a certain point, until the city hall responds, for you, city hall is the hierarchically higher level of governance in relation to the events of your life. So, the water is leaking, the tap or pipe bursts, you write to the housing office, everything is fixed. Something is wrong with the lawn, you write, everything is brought into order. And then suddenly, at some point, you discover that City Hall does not react. What will you do? You know that there is a governor, there is a president to whom you can write. That is, you always look for the hierarchically higher circuit. By enclosing the feed-forward and feedback lines between yourself and which, you can govern the object. Therefore, a person always looks for this contour, this circuit. More precisely, a person always looks for limitations. When he finds them, he begins to describe them. And in essence, seeing as we have undertaken to speak about cultism or sectism, then there are no cults or sects. These are terminological traps. There is the human being, and there are hierarchically higher levels of governance in relation to him. If it is raining outside, you say, "Oh, rain, it would be better if you stopped dropping." And then it stops. Someone witnesses this. You and the tribe choose for yourselves the parameters. Aha! Prayed to the rain, uttered some words, and the rain stopped. Rain, this is our highest limitation. Then it turns out that no, also photosynthesis is needed in order to harvest a crop, meaning the sun is the higher limitation. That is, appealing to the sun, you get a good harvest, and after that, for you, the sun, one way or the other, is the hierarchically highest contour circuit. Yes, rain, wind, all of that matters, but among all things, the sun turned out to be. And then what? Then the human being invents the telescope and discovers that, in fact, there are many. You don't even necessarily need a telescope. Seeing that the moon shines at night, we say, "Oh, so how does the moon influence us? Interesting." Seeing the stars, we ask, are the stars not a factor? And then horoscopes appear, and other ways of describing this hierarchically higher, as the author understood, level of governance in relation to man. That is, man discovered that the stars somehow influence me. Well, it's possible. The moon there influences the tides. Does it influence? Yes. A person described the interaction of the moon and the earth and obtained a description of one of these circuits. And again, this is a limitation. If you can't walk where there is tide and ebb, when it's low tide you walk, but when the tide comes in you will be swept away, that's a limitation in relation to your activity. In the end, we reach the cosmos. Even Soviet civilization was built on the idea that the upper limitation was the cosmos. That is, the human being was a creator. In the West, by announcement, the human being is an inseparable part of the market. The market is the limitation. There is a market, there is a human being. No market, no human being. The human being does not exist if there is no market. Therefore, when Margaret Thatcher said in the 1980s that in the territory of the Soviet Union it is economically justified for no more than 15 million to live, she's right from the Western point of view about what a human being is. If there is no market for the existence of 40 million, 140 million, 180 million, then there is no sense for that number of people to exist. Some historically taken shape Abrahamic faith doctrines say that there is a creator and the human being is creation. And then a human being exists only when there is a creator. If there is no creator, then there is no human being. What is this? This is also a description of limitations. And one way or another, if a person multiplies his capacities with the help of Various trainings, self-cognition, self-digging, the West especially loves this. Having discovered that the market is not the only limitation in life, they encounter it and say that there is some infinity and you must multiply your possibilities, be eternally mobile, eternally cool, good-looking, stylish, charming, attractive, life will smile on you, and so on. But let's return to describing the hierarchically highest level. One way or another, sooner or later, people came to the idea that there is some kind of supra-mundane reality. And note that if there is already a certain ideological shell, then culturological victory is gained by the one who gives the more accurate description to the existing highest limitation. If you give a description on their already existing methodological level, you always get a war of conceptions. Because some say, we have the sun, others say, we have the moon, and they fight until they kill their fellow tribesmen and burn them in fires of wars. But the one who describes the cosmos, he encompasses them all. He says, not the moon, not the sun, but the universe. There is our limitation. Thus, one way or another, people came to a certain supramundane reality. That is, practice is the criterion of truth. And as a result, for example, Abrahamic religions, whose representatives in fact popularized the term sect, to be more precise, they made it a mass label, have more than 4,000 so-called sects based on Christianity. There are several thousand based on historically taken shape Islam. And what is this? In actual fact, between them, between the main teaching and the so-called sectarians, there is no difference. But the question, according to which parameters? There is no difference in the parameter that they all describe interaction with the hierarchically highest level of governance in relation to the human being. Both can be mistaken only in how they describe it. That is, representatives of one faith doctrine say that the old one was belied, it was necessary to create a new one.
Are you religious or an atheist?
Religious.
Me too. Are you Christian or Buddhist?
Christian.
Me too. Are you Catholic or Protestant?
Protestant.
Me too. Are you Episcopalian or Baptist?
I'm Baptist.
Hallelujah, me too. Are you Baptist Church of God or Baptist Church of the Lord?
Baptist Church of God.
Me too. Are you Original Baptist Church of God or you Reformed Baptist Church of God?
Reformed Baptist Church of God.
Me too. Are you Reformed Baptist Church of God Reformation of 1879 or Reformed Baptist Church of God Reformation of 1915?
Reformed Baptist Church of God Reformation 1915.
Die, you heretic scum!
So what do we come to in the given case? In our modern human civilization on planet Earth, a group of people appears who says that, yes, actually not the cosmos, yes, a supramundane reality as a certain hierarchically highest, all-encompassing governance, it exists. Many people answer the question about God like this: why discuss something the existence of which cannot be proven or refuted logically? Indeed, it cannot. However, everyone still does give an answer inside themselves, and the consequences of that answer extend across their entire lives. A person's relation to God is strongly influenced by the environment in which he grew up. In a society of atheists, most children become atheists. In a society of believers, believers. In a society of agnostics, agnostics, and so on. Some atheists consider their position the most constructive because they supposedly do not believe in what cannot be proven. However, they believe in the absence of God, which also has not been proven by anyone. And agnostics believe in the impossibility of cognizing God, which also has not been proven by anyone. So the question is not whether to believe or not to believe, but what to believe in. In the surrounding world, we can see a hierarchy of intellect. The mineral world, the plant world, the animal world, the human being. The intellect of a lower level cannot fully understand a higher one. A cabbage cannot understand what a goat is, and when the goat eats the cabbage, for the cabbage, it is an inexplicable intervention from a higher level. Likewise, a goat cannot understand what a human being is. But does it have grounds to think that the hierarchy of intellect ends with it? And does a human being have such grounds? In the world, the more complex the system, the more powerful the intellect required to build it. To move a stick to an anthill requires one level of intellect, to build a bird's nest, a stronger one, to assemble a child's construction set, stronger still, to design the ISS, stronger still. This principle is universal for all systems of any scale. Then why do we believe that the most complex of all systems known to us, the universe, is designed and is governed without the participation of the highest intellect? Is this not a violation of logic? Our life depends on the answer to that question. If we believe that the hierarchy of intellect ends at the human being, or that the universe was created without a higher mind reason, then life hardly has any meaning. It may be suddenly cut short, and one's meaningless existence can be dragged out in whatever way. The result is one. But if we believe the hierarchy of intellect continues above the human being, then the hierarchically highest architect has a design by which his creation develops. A good architect necessarily endows every element of the system, including the human being, with objectives and with the means to achieve them. And since the human being is given intellect and freedom of choice, he can independently determine his objectives and fill life with the meaning of realizing them. If life objectives and the means are determined by a person in harmony with himself, society, and creation, and a person has the will to achieve them, then the objectives will be realized. The question is only one of trust in the hierarchically higher intellect, trust that the potential and capabilities given by him correspond to our personal Dobrius aspirations. Everything that happens in the best possible way, given the nraviousness and ethics characteristic of people. The path of his providence remains to people them who believe in his existence while not believing him. And the principle practices the criterion of truth, gives the confirmation that, look, we, comrades, in our view, as the authors say, have risen to a different methodological level. We have more accurately described the interaction. This does not mean that there is no truth in your books, your faith doctrines. But some factors which played a significant role in interaction with the hierarchically higher level, they turned out to be critical today. Indeed, if the Creator exists, the Most High, if He created the human being, if in interaction with Him He expects certain behavior, yet He gave freedom of choice and will, then what remains to the human being? He cannot, after all, govern us like biorobots. No, He addresses us in the language of life circumstances. As we describe it, so we live. And therefore, within the conception of social safety, such a concept is introduced as the hierarchically highest, all-encompassing governance. Relies on knowledge that is elementary for technically minded people about the arrangement of the world. For the humanitologists, this is a big problem to enter into this terminology.
Hello. We need you to draw 7 red lines, all of them strictly perpendicular, some with green ink and some with transparent. Can you do that?
No, I'm afraid...
Let's not rush into any hasty answers, Anderson. The task has been set and needs to be carried out. At the end of the day, you are an expert.
The term red line implies the color of the line to be red. 2 lines can be perpendicular. All 7 can't be simultaneously perpendicular to each other.
So now you've confused everyone. So what exactly is stopping us from doing this?
Geometry.
Just ignore it.
In the sufficiently general theory of governance, the most accurate description is given, which can be verified only by the principle, practice is the criterion of truth. And therefore, to say that this is some kind of a sect or cult, to speak in the terminology of sects, can only be said by a person who looks from a methodologically higher level. But so far, there are no such people. In this case, someone says it is an equal methodological level, someone says it is lower, and then they call it sects, deviations, and so on. And there are people who, on the basis of this knowledge, understood how the world is arranged and how everything functions, and they don't worry at all. For them, terminology doesn't matter. What matters to them? Now let's consider how any ideological shell can be formed. What is an ideological shell? It is always a description of interaction with upper limitations. We always seek the limits of our possibilities. If the mayor, the city hall is not the limit, if parents are not the limit, then we seek. Who do we interact with? From whom do we, so to speak, ask permission for our activity? Who is the creator, the author, the maker of these rules? We always look for the one who sets the rules of interaction. Therefore, ideological shells, or more precisely, descriptions of upper limitations, enclosing the circuits of feed-forward and feedback lines, can be development when a person moves from a primitive understanding of a higher level of governance to a most general, most plausible one. But one can also deceive a person, lead him into delusions. That is, knowing the real limitations, one can invent lower ones. For example, there is no creator, no God, but there is the market. The market is a lower level of governance, but many people can accept such an ideological shell and follow it. But one way or the other, all ideological shells must answer two questions. First, in accordance with the functioning of supersystems, how to ensure the existence in the environment, and how to achieve the objectives for the sake of which you ended up in that environment. And through this prism, one can evaluate any faith doctrine, sect, ideological shell, confession, whatever you call it. That is, firstly, where is your sociological doctrine, how to communicate among one another, how to be in harmony with creation. The second question, how do you describe the upper limitations? And here we can already recall, let's say, what is known to us. The West says, the market is our upper limitation, man is a part of the market. At the same time, people can be found who say, thou shalt not lend upon usury to thy brother. So to say, there are people for whom a creator exists, but for the ones that they graze, they give only a doctrine of how to be with creation. And that's all. Historically taken shape Islam. There is a prohibition on usurious interest. There is the concept of one creator, of God. Give any other ideological shell. The Soviet Union. Materialistic atheism. Cosmos is our everything. So how will we live on Earth? Eliminate the exploitation of man by man, because technology makes it possible to satisfy the needs of everyone, from each according to ability, to each according to need. Second point, and what are we here for? We are here because the upper limitation, the highest governance in relation to us, is the cosmos. We must understand nature and the cosmos, and preserve life and reason on planet Earth, export it to other planets. You can go back to primordial tribes. So a person declares himself God, and he gives meanings of life, for the sake of what his tribesmen are here and so forth. And likewise, in a natural way, the rules of agriculture and so on will be formed. That is, of course, the question of how to ensure one's existence in the environment will not even arise. But of course, there will be those who pretend towards being gods, and so on. Liberalism, in its essence, is a doctrine for the crowd. One can say this is the Western approach, the same thing. There is a market, there is a human being. No market, no human being. So the essence of liberalism is infinite possibilities, no limitations, an infinite multitude of possibilities. They cannot even name them, but they say that man is such a creature that can develop infinitely, no limitations exist. That is, from the point of view of this doctrine, there are essentially no rules. So, circuits of feed-forward and feedback lines are not identified or described. The upper limitation is not named. It is not explained how to interact with it, how to connect with it, how to understand that it exists, and how to understand that it is the highest limitation in the life activity of a person. They say, just infinity, and that's it. And the human being, as he is a creature after all limited in his capacities, what is it, 120 watts a day we energetically work out? He simply exhausts himself grabbing at this and that. There are no limitations, leave me alone, I do what I want. But in the implicit defaults, we remember that they will operate the doctrine of buying up the world in the name of God, as described in Deuteronomy, Isaiah. If we speak about empires and monarchies, it's the same as the example with the mayor and the governor. A person is appointed as the hierarchically highest, all-encompassing governor. But practice, the criterion of truth, and the development of humanity show that, no, a human being is not the upper limitation in the life activity of his own kind. Even the earth, even a tsunami, can impact human life, even if statistically more rarely, but far more powerfully than any monarch. Yes, if society has matured to the point of describing the hierarchically highest, all-encompassing governance, the supramundane reality, then a human being, as if, makes of himself a go-between. So it's like, yes, can you imagine this upper limitation in the form of a creator and all-holder exists, but someone must help you, and I am his vicegerent. But if it's difficult for you to understand, if you have not yet come to an understanding of the supramundane reality, you can draw a parallel with the existing hierarchy of governance in statehood. There is a president, there are governors, and so on. And disputes of confessions, disputes of sects, or those who are called sects, with the fundamental teachings, they are always built around what? This is an example of as if a mayor came to a governor and said, "Listen, governor, you are telling us not what is being sent down to you from the Kremlin. The president gave one instruction, and in your decrees you speak of something else. And now 10 mayors have rebelled. So, there you go, call them sectarians. And on the basis of what did they do this? Maybe they heard Putin's address somewhere on television, or saw that the All-Russia People's Front reported that, in my view, around 80% or maybe 73% of the president's decrees are not being implemented. But even if we take the situation with the May decrees, for example, a mayor reads the May decrees and says to the governor, "Listen, this seems to be about something different." That is roughly the same situation. And if you look at the fundamental faith doctrine and any sect based on it, those people say, "Listen, comrades, hierarchs, how should we understand this provision? You say it cannot be discussed, but I have a question. How should I understand it?" And they are told, "No, we are the true conductors of the will of the president. We know exactly how to interpret the law. Roughly speaking, this is how it can be explained." So if we use this sect, cult terminology, then let us give a definition of a sect. But then the hierarchies of any historically taken shape teachings will not find themselves in the best situation, because in the materials of the conception of social safety, it is clearly listed. First, it is the presence of one teaching for the crowd and one for the initiated. Not all rituals and traditions are understood by the flock, what they are performed for. Then the presence of dogmas that are not subject to discussion under any circumstances, the presence of rituals accompanying any gathering, the presence of a hierarchy of any degree, from 1-2 levels to a dozen, and naturally, since there is a teaching for the crowd and one for the initiated, that is, esotericism and exotericism, then there is also a prohibition on methodology of cognition and creativity. For example, having mastered the sufficiently general theory of governance, knowing the 2 points, ensuring existence in the environment and achieving objectives for the sake of which you exist in the environment, I can describe any ideological shell and say, this one will likely work, that one will not. Where can one get such a methodology of cognition in other faith doctrines, in other confessions? As a rule, there is a strict description in the form of dogmas, And then on this basis they say, that is actually a sect. But take the definition of sect that I gave and pass through it any widespread religion. Rituals. Not everyone understands them. Are they present at the times of gatherings? They are present. Then the presence of a teaching for the crowd and one for the initiated. Present. Hierarchy. Present. But I have yet to encounter any books on a sufficiently general theory of governance. That is, on the basis of established dogmas that are forbidden to discuss, it's impossible to cognize new phenomena in the life of society. And examples with Copernicus, the earth is flat or round, are proof that dogmatization leads to the inhibition of a person, and later to a response reaction in the form of some manifestations, protests, and so on. In any case, it will be rejected. Or, well, one could of course say the following, that you can hear about a person getting caught up in a sect or a cult, he gives away all his things or something else, and he goes and hangs himself, or something like that. And in the majority of historically taken shape confessions, there is a cult of self-sacrifice, that is, a cult of suicide.